For the past year, I've been completely obsessed with YouTube growth. I'm talking 12-hour days studying viral videos, analyzing retention graphs, and reverse engineering every single successful creator's strategy. I've read every single book, watched every course, tested every hack you can possibly imagine. And what I figured out from all of this, it's kind of crazy, but also simple. Because while everyone else is chasing the same overused strategies, better optimized frameworked thumbnails, clickbaity titles, posting at the same perfect time every day. Well, while that was all going on, I found that the real secret to YouTube growth was hiding in places that literally most creators never thought to even look in the first place. But luckily I did. I'm talking about books. I read psychology books, business strategy guides, even neuroscience research. Yeah, I got that crazy. By the way, if you guys are new here, my name is Dylan, and in the past year, this obsession has helped me grow 2 of my own YouTube channels to over 20,000 subscribers each, getting videos with hundreds of thousands of views on each channel and discovering strategies that literally no one else in the YouTube space is talking about today. And I'm going to share all of it. I'm going to be sharing the most unconventional, out-of-the-box, unorthodox lessons from my year-long obsession with YouTube growth. Now, the first thing that I learned is a psychological principle that came from a psychology book, not a YouTube course. The Goldilocks effect is basically the idea that people prefer things that are just right. Not too simple, not too complex, not too short, not too big, not too familiar, not too foreign, right? There's a balance. And with all of these, including this one, there's a way that this applies to YouTube, because most creators often live on each side of the extremes. They either make content that's way too basic, boring, or way too advanced, which is overwhelming. They'll either copy exactly what everyone else is doing, which is too familiar, or try being completely different, which is too foreign. But there's a sweet spot, and this sweet spot is what I call familiar but fresh. And it's where you take a concept that your audience already knows and loves, but you present it with a unique twist that they've never seen before. For example, instead of making another how to get 1,000 subscribers video, I decided to make a video called 6 Signs You're Going to Blow Up on YouTube, Keep Going. It has really, from a psychological perspective, the same underlying desire, which is to grow on YouTube, but a completely fresh and new angle. And the result of me going about this new fresh angle was 147,000 views because it hit that Goldilocks zone, that familiar enough click, but fresh enough to also share. Now, if you want to know how to apply this to your content, look at your last 10 video ideas, and you need to have self-awareness, but ask yourselves, are they too familiar just like everyone else, or are they too foreign, completely unrelated to what your audience actually wants? And what you need to do is you need to figure out how to find that middle ground. Now, the second lesson that I learned in this last year of obsessing over YouTube is called the Zeigarnik effect. This one comes from cognitive psychology, and it's probably the most powerful retention hack I have ever discovered, because the Zeigarnik effect states that people remember incomplete things or tasks better than completed ones. Our brains literally cannot let go of unfinished business. Think about it. This is why when you have a breakup that has no closure, you mourn or have heartbreak over that breakup for significantly longer than a breakup where you have closure. If you want another example to think about, why do you binge watch Netflix series? Well, because each episode ends on a cliffhanger. Your brain needs closure. Most YouTubers completely ignore this principle. They give away everything in the first 30 seconds. They wonder why people click off. But here's what I do instead. I create what I call nested loops. So what I'll do is I'll open a story at the very beginning of my video, and I'll do this through a line like this. I'll say, later in this video, I'm going to tell you about the time I almost quit YouTube completely and the one conversation that changed everything. That was an example of that. Then what I'll do is I'll open another loop after that. An example of this could sound like, but first, let me show you this weird strategy that I discovered. And then what I'll do is I'll nest them by adding another. An example of this could sound like, actually, before we get to that, you need to understand this psychological principle first. Now, this is a bit more advanced, but it works so well. I'm constantly throughout my videos opening loops, and then I'm closing them when I'm ready to open new ones. And the result is very clear. In every single video I do this, my average view duration is above 30%, which is very healthy. The videos I don't always fall below 29%. So if you guys want to try this in your content, in your next video, tease 3 different stories or revelations at the very beginning of the video, and then only reveal them one at a time throughout the video as it progresses. And then always open a new loop before closing the previous one. Now, the third lesson that I learned was the contrast principle. This one comes from the book Influence. And essentially what it talks about is the contrast principle. And it says that we judge everything relative to what we've just experienced. For example, a $50 shirt seems very cheap after looking at a $200 shirt. Now, with that in mind, I'm gonna first show you what YouTubers usually do and how they get this wrong. What most YouTubers do is they try to make every video absolutely amazing. But when everything's amazing, nothing's amazing. So instead, what I do is I use strategic contrast. I'll start a video talking about a common mistake or failure. For example, I could say something like, I used to make this huge mistake that killed my channel growth. And then what I'll do is when I'm done saying that line, I'll contrast it with the solution. So I could do that by saying something like, but then I discovered this one thing that changed everything for me. So what happens is the solution seems way more powerful because of the contrast with the problem that I just mentioned. The thing is, you can even carry this over into thumbnails. If everyone in your niche uses bright, colorful thumbnails, try a simple black and white one because it'll stand out due to the contrast it's evoking. It's important to know the key here, which is to be intentionally different and not accidentally different. This is why it's so important to understand and do research within your niche. Now, the fourth lesson is the IKEA effect. This one's one of my favorites. This principle comes from behavioral economics. And what it is named after the furniture company, IKEA. We've all been there. And the IKEA effects, essentially what it does is it states that people value things way more when they've put effort into creating them themselves. For example, you love that IKEA table that you bought way more than a table that you bought from somewhere else because you built it yourself. And if we look at this in correlation with YouTube, most YouTube creators completely miss this, like 100% of the time. What they do is try to give their audience everything on a silver platter. But through trial and error, and a lot of it, this is what I learned. When you make your audience work just a little bit, they become way more invested in your content. So instead of saying things like, here are 5 tips for YouTube growth, maybe what I could do is say, I'm going to give you a framework, but you need to adapt it into your specific situation. Now, when I do it or frame it this way, what's happening is I'm not giving them a complete strategy. Instead, I'll give them 80% of the strategy and let them figure out the 20%. When I do this, this does 2 things. First, they feel more ownership over their strategy because they customized it. And second, they're more likely to actually implement it because they've invested more mental energy into it. I even do this with my video titles. I could name my video titles how to get more views, but instead I will usually use titles more along the lines of the one thing I wish I knew before starting YouTube. Why? Because it makes them work to figure out what that one thing is. So if you are sitting here watching this, wondering how you can do this for yourself, try this. In your next video, give your audience a framework or give them a template of some sort, but make them customize it for their specific situation. When you do, they will be more engaged and more likely to take action on that framework or system. Now, the 5th lesson that I've learned over obsessing over YouTube is the paradox of choice. Now, this final lesson, it comes from Barry Schwartz, who has done a ridiculous amount of research on decision making. Now, the paradox of choice, it basically states that too many options actually make people less likely to choose anything at all, because more choice leads to more decision paralysis. And this completely changed how I structured my content. Now, again, if we look at what most YouTubers do, most of the time they think more is better. They'll give 10 tips, 15 strategies. I've even seen some videos like 42 tips on whatever it is. Or they'll sometimes give like 20 different tools for the audience member to try in order to get a desired situation. It's ridiculous and it's getting out of hand. But what actually happens is their audience just gets overwhelmed and implements absolutely nothing. Now, what I like to do is follow a rule called the rule of 3. And it's essentially where every video focuses on maximum 3 main pain points. Every main pain point has maximum 3 subpoints. And the reason is because 3 is the magic number because it's enough to feel comprehensive, but not so much that it's overwhelming. And I also apply this to my channel strategy. So instead of trying to cover every single aspect of YouTube growth, I focus on 3 main core areas if you notice within my content. And those 3 core areas are psychology, strategy, and execution. What this does is it makes it way easier for my audience to understand what I'm actually about and easier for me to create consistent content about. Even my call to actions follow this same rule. Instead of saying to go like, subscribe, comment, or share, which I've never done in any of these videos, what I do is I pick one primary call to action per video. And the result of doing this is I have way higher engagement rates than most people do because people aren't paralyzed by too many choices that I give them. Now, I have a little bonus lesson that I learned here over this last year called the meta lesson. And this is probably the biggest lesson from my year of obsession, honestly. The best YouTube strategies aren't found in YouTube courses. They're found in psychology books and business books and human behavioral books and research. Because while everyone else is copying these same surface level tactics, creating more noise in this industry, you can gain a massive advantage by understanding the deeper principles of human psychology in correlation with content and viewing patterns that humans have. Think about it. YouTube it's just a platform, but the people watching are humans with predictable psychological patterns. We just have to understand what they are. And when you understand those patterns, you can create content that works with human nature instead of against it. This is exactly why I spend more time reading psychology books than watching YouTube tutorials. This is why I study successful businesses and the infrastructure of how it's built, not just successful YouTubers. The principles that make people buy products, stay engaged with brands, and remember advertisements, it's those same exact principles that work for YouTube content. Nothing revolutionary here, guys. Now, this is like something I'm obsessed over. So I could go on for hours talking about the psychological principles and how to make it adapt to content in YouTube. But here's what I want you guys to do right now. If you're up for it, I want you to pick one of these 5 lessons and implement it in your next video. Don't try to use them all at once because you'll just be overwhelmed. And that's the paradox of choice and action. If you want to dive deeper into this psychological approach to YouTube growth, I have created a completely free AI assistant that's trained on all of these principles plus hundreds of other strategies. And it's essentially like having a YouTube strategist who understands psychology, available to you 24/7. And as I said, it is free. So if you guys want to check that out, it's in the link right below this video. Now, I have one last very important thing I want to mention. Stop looking for YouTube growth secrets in the same places as everyone else. Read psychology books, study successful businesses, understand human behavior, because that's where the real advantages are hiding. While every other person out there is optimizing their thumbnails and chasing algorithm changes, you'll be working with fundamental human psychology that hasn't changed for thousands of years. The creators who understand this will dominate the next era of YouTube. The question is, will you be one of them? Now, I want you to remember one thing, if anything, from this. YouTube growth isn't about hacking the algorithm. It's simply about understanding human beings. So with that being said, stop watching videos about YouTube growth and go apply some of these psychology tricks or strategies to your content, because your future self will thank you very, very much.